Hello, everyone. My name is Deb Taylor, and I want to welcome you to the Virtual College Exploration for all Ohio students, sponsored by the Ohio Association for College Admission Counseling and StriveScan. Thank you for joining us this evening. I have a few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the question and A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. Your camera and microphone are off, so the presenter cannot see you or hear you. This is just one of many different sessions happening, so be sure to check out the full schedule at oacac.org. This presentation is being recorded and will be available in about a week at the same website, oac.org. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our presenters.
So good evening, everybody. My name is Tom Fanning, Senior Associate Director of Undergraduate Admission at Case Western Reserve University, and so happy that you're able to join us tonight. And I am also assisted by my colleague, J.P. O'Hagan, who will be answering questions that you might put in the Q&A section of this presentation here tonight. And so we're very thankful that, again, you can take some time to come to this presentation. We're looking forward to the time when we can host all of you on campus, and I'm sure every college is thinking the same way. We have these wonderful campuses that 24/7 activity that because of the health concerns, we all have to be careful these days, but we are looking forward to that time when we can host you all on campus. But in the meantime, we have put together a presentation tonight meant to give you some sense of who we are, with the view that there are about 3,000 schools in the United States, and you're probably getting email from all of them. And we all seem to look the same in the pictures. It's always a sunny day, everybody's good looking, never any snow on the ground. But we are different, and we all have different personalities and different histories and traditions. So tonight we want to give you our presentation of self, who we think we are as an institution. And we're looking for students out there that would love, absolutely love to be on our campus, take full advantage of the resources that we have at a wonderful place like ours. Not that everything we talk about here is exclusive only to Case Western Reserve University, but very deliberately we want to tell you who we think we are, and we're looking for people, again, who would love to spend 4 years of their undergraduate career on such a rich campus with such rich resources and opportunities. So without further ado, let me share this, grab the screen here and go into our presentation. So what did I tell you about the sunny picture with everybody happy and sitting around picnic tables? Case Western Reserve University, it's actually a wonderful campus in the city of Cleveland. Of course, you may know that already, presuming most of our audience is from Ohio, but we are in city proper, about 5 miles from downtown, and I'll talk about the campus in a second. But if you look at any of our recruitment materials, you will see that the tagline, the recruitment message that we send to students is thinking beyond the possible, which makes perfect sense for a school like ours, which is a top-tier research institution where historically we've always been able to attract really strong students, intellectually curious, who have ambitions for their futures. Well, we think we have an organization and institution in place with the right faculty members, with their expertise, the right guidance from advisors, and the right resources and the right programs to allow you to go beyond the possible, which again is the very essence of what a research institution does. And to talk about that and to talk about what we do as an institution, you have to start on the academic side. And so I think historically, if you look at Case Western Reserve in history, so much of our acclaim, so much of our fame and our place in the marketplace has come from the STEM areas, the engineering school, pre-professional, the pre-med areas, and those are some of our larger departments. But there are 96 different programs of study at Case Western Reserve, and they cross all disciplines represented up on the screen here, in the arts and engineering, humanities, natural sciences, nursing, social science, business. So we're a comprehensive institution with a lot of opportunities. Now, one thing I want to point out that might make us distinctive from some of the other schools you might look at, especially the research group that you may very well be looking at, is that when you're applying for admission to Case Western Reserve, you're applying to the university and not necessarily to a specific program. So there are really 4 colleges of Case Western Reserve University. We have the College of Arts and Sciences, we have the School of Engineering, we have the Weatherhead School of Management, which is our business school, and we have the Bolton School of Nursing. But when you're applying for admission, you're applying to the university, and if you're offered admission, you may choose any major or double major across different colleges of the university. And there's one caveat to that. If you want to study music, we do ask that you send a video audition for our music department to review, with the idea that we hope students have some prowess on their instruments if they wanted a college major in music. But beyond that, a student is allowed to cross different colleges of the university. You may choose anything you want as a major. And the students who love Case Western Reserve love that flexibility. And because of the way our curriculum is structured, it makes it readily available to structure a curriculum such that you might have double majors or majors and minors. In fact, over half of our students are double majoring in different disciplines. So it's not uncommon at a place like Case Western Reserve to have our engineers double majoring in music. Not uncommon to have a philosophy major who might be thinking about medical school, or a business major who might be considering taking some STEM classes because they want to work for a tech company someday. And so we think we're structured really well for highly qualified students, to the point where we want to be the kind of institution where you can take classes that you're supremely interested in and follow those paths to thinking beyond the possible, which again, works really well for a tagline at an institution like ours. So academic flexibility across all of the disciplines, number 1. Number 2, we have right people in place. We think, so we don't let you loose on the curriculum or let you loose on the campus without some guidance on how to use it. You'll have faculty advisors. Even if you haven't declared a major, your first seminar class, that will be your first academic advisor. You live in the residence halls. The residence hall directors are 24/7 counseling available. It's tradition at Case Western Reserve that every student is assigned a personal librarian, all kinds of research resources. But how do you access all of them? And that's the job of the personal librarian, to work with you. And then we assign every incoming first-year student a navigator, a counselor who's going to stay with you for 4 years. And their job is to make sure you know how to access all the resources, not only in the classroom, but beyond the classroom. How do you sign up for internship or co-op positions? Or how do you look for research jobs? That navigator is there to make sure that we don't hear from you in the 3rd year that you wish you could have done something in the 1st year, or wish you would have known you could have done something in the 1st year, because 4 years goes quickly and we want you to take full advantage of what we can offer. It's also important to say that we are a top 20, a tier 1 research institution. That's what we do. There's public data on research dollars that come into an institution. Currently, Case Western Reserve is number 17 on that list, effectively making us a top 20 research institution. So think about the opportunities here. We're a school of 5,200 undergraduates and roughly 6,500 graduate level students. That's a pretty modest size for being a tier 1 top 20 research institution. And that the way that's going to translate into your life is your opportunity to be involved in research starting from your 1st year. That's an expectation, and we think that's what you would find if you were a student at Case Western Reserve. We have data that says 99% of our students do some kind of experiential learning, but 84% of our undergraduates are listed officially as a member of a research project. So we think this is a true advantage for people who understand the opportunities here. If you are a member of a research project that leads to a publication, that means your name is on a publication. That is the coin of the realm when you're talking about power in academia and higher education. So it's a great opportunity for those who understand the possibilities here. I also want to talk about being an institution that not only is a top 20 research institution, but also has the resources to be there. One of the more famous buildings on campus is the Think Box. It is our 7-story makerspace. It's the largest academic makerspace under one roof in the country. And this is open access. Anybody from any department can use it. And basically the metaphor here is we have the kind of resources where your great ideas can come to fruition. This is a place where you build things, you invent, you tinker, you build prototypes. With your ideas, you bring them to life. Again, we think this is a metaphor for the kind of school that we are at Case Western Reserve. This is also a place where you would come live. The rule is first year and second year students must live on campus, and third and fourth year students can live on campus if they choose to, or they can move off into the abundant apartments and townhouses around us. But the point here is you're going to be a resident. You're going to move to Cleveland. You're going to move to University Circle. And I'm going to take a venture here that even if you're not from the Cleveland area, somewhere around Ohio, you would become Cleveland lovers. If you loved Case Western Reserve, you will become Cleveland lovers by the time you graduate, because you're going to use the city because you're going to come live on campus in University Circle. When you have this percentage of people living on campus, all the clubs and activities that you might expect to thrive, they do. You'd be impressed with the number of music ensembles on campus and performing arts ensembles. We're a varsity, our Division III NCAA school, so we compete athletically in a national conference called the University Athletic Association, which includes schools like University of Chicago, WashU in St. Louis, University of Rochester, Emory down in Atlanta, Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. So it's a national conference and we compete well. People involved in service or all the clubs and intramural sports. We have a thriving Greek life on campus if you're interested in joining one of the fraternities and sororities. And we're also a place that revels in all of the cultural and religious traditions represented by our students and faculty and administrators. So you're going to find some connection with the religions and cultures of the world, which we think rounds out an education in a residential environment like ours. So I want to make a few points about where we're located, because what I've just said, my points about how we operate our school, you're going to find that at many schools, especially schools, top tier research institutions like ours. But we are the only top tier research institution in University Circle in Cleveland. And if you're not familiar with the Cleveland area, this is where we sit relative to downtown. It's about 5 miles due east of downtown. The Tincomville University Center is the geographic center of our campus. So you get some sense of what's around us and where we are located. And all the residence halls, all the classroom buildings and so on are pocketed throughout University Circle. So, but I want to talk about our neighborhood a little bit more. Point out that we're about 5 miles from downtown, as I said, and the main east-west train line in Cleveland is the Red Line, and there are 2 stops of the Red Line on our campus, and that heads right downtown to Terminal Tower, maybe the 3rd largest building in the background of this screenshot that you see. And that Red Line also, by the way, the farthest stop on the west side is the airport, so if people are flying different locations, it's a pretty easy move to get to the airport from us on the east, from Case Western Reserve on the east side. But if you chose not to go downtown for the Fortune 500 companies, the athletic venues, the Playhouse Square where all the beautiful theaters are located, you can stay right in your neighborhood and be busy 24/7. University Circle happens to be beyond the home to Case Western Reserve University, also home to many of the cultural institutions in Cleveland. The Cleveland Museum of Art at the end of our street is 40,000 masterworks, free and open to the public 6 days a week. Many of the curators at the Cleveland Museum of Art have some faculty status at Case Western Reserve. In fact, you could take an art history class in the museum. It is right across the street. Across the street from that, next to our library, is Severance Hall, home to Cleveland's orchestra. It is one of the big 5 in the country. And if you know music, you would probably know of the Cleveland Orchestra. Literally, this is right on our campus. So the point here is, if you're living on this campus, you're passing by all of these things on the way to the residence halls and the dining halls. Think about rounding out an education beyond the classroom with all these wonderful opportunities and advantages. That's what we think is important about a difference maker. It could be a difference maker for us. But I'd be remiss if I didn't go even further to talk about all the major research hospitals located around us. Again, within walking distance. University hospitals, the Cleveland VA is the 3rd largest VA in the country. And then we are 3 blocks away from the world-renowned Cleveland Clinic. In fact, last summer, we opened a brand new building called the Health Education Campus. It was a joint project between Case Western Reserve and the Cleveland Clinic. It was a $515 million project. And that opened last summer. That houses our medical school, our dental school, and our nursing school. But maybe even more interestingly, right now, we're preparing to host the first presidential debate in the health education campus next Tuesday evening. So we will be the center of the political universe early next week, all in our health education campus. So think about studying anything related to healthcare and having the ability to do clinical rotations through these 3 major hospitals and then more around the greater Cleveland area. We think these are opportunities and advantages for people who might consider Case Western Reserve. So that's our overview. That's our presentation of self. That's who we think we are. Strong academic flexibility and opportunity, research-centered, people in place to help you navigate the institution, residential campus with all the things that go on beyond the classroom, and a primacy on experiential learning, either doing research or doing internships or co-op positions. That's who we think we are. We're looking for people who would love this, who would say, yes, yes, that's mine, that's me. Because again, there are a lot of choices that you'll have as you go through this college search. So I want to switch gears a little bit to talk about the process. Admission process, financial aid, scholarship, very quickly. So inevitably, when you start talking about admissions, you end up getting into a discussion about numbers, GPA, standardized test scores, and so on. But I wanted to start off a quick conversation here about how we make our decisions, what's important to us, and why do we do what we do. First of all, we need to find people who are going to be successful academically. So we need people with strong academic backgrounds because that's who we presume our student body is going to be. Second piece is we're really interested in students who are going to contribute their own skill sets, their own talents, their own personalities to the campus. Okay, there's no right answer as to which is best, but when we review applications, inevitably we're going to say, what will you bring to the campus? It's important to us as an institution to build a diverse and talented class, and that's diversity in all different meanings. It could be racial, it could be gender expression, it could be geographic, it could be socioeconomic, it could be political, it could be faith traditions. We think we're a more interesting place the more diverse we can be. So we try and affect that in the admission process. And then it's also very important to us that we fill all academic departments. Because of the nature of our history and where we've gained such accolades around the country, we could probably fill the first year class with biomedical engineers, which happens to be our largest academic department. You know what? The accounting people and the dance people and the classics people won't be happy. So the goal here is to make sure we're filling all of our academic departments. So these are our primary considerations when we're going through the admission process. So now some of the things we very specifically look for would be your academic preparation. That doesn't just mean grade point average. You can't talk about grade point average without looking at what classes are being taken. So the rigor of the curriculum is important. And we also are looking at the school context because inevitably we're going to have 1,000 schools in our applicant pool, and they all have different grading scales, different approaches to education, maybe even different curricular offerings. So we're looking at everything within the context of the school that the student's coming from, so you have to trust that we're going to be looking into that. We love students who have developed an idea of what their interests are. Not that you've picked your major or your career path, we don't expect that. But if you like math and science, then maybe you're heading in a STEM path, and we would expect maybe to see a lot of rigor in the math and science choices that you made in high school. Where if you were interested maybe in law and maybe studying history or social sciences, we might be less concerned about your math and your science preparation and more concerned with your social science or your language preparation. Who knows? So part of this is part of the conversation is what's happening when we're reviewing applications for admission. Engagement. If you are involved in your high school community or your local community, your residential community, we love that because I made the point about having a residential community, trying to build a community of scholars. Well, if you've already shown that in your background, well, why wouldn't we love it? That's something that we value and love to see. I want to mention approach to school. We're looking for students who are intellectually curious. And it could be about anything. If you have some diverse interests, maybe something that we don't even know anything about, but you might bring that to campus. Think about how interesting that would make us. So do you follow your curiosities? Is there a difference? And we would submit there is a difference between the student who will do everything they could do to get the right number of points to get an A versus the student who finds some subject matter that so intrigues them that they go the extra mile to study everything they can about that. So having those kinds of maybe recommendation letters or a suggestion of that in the essays that you write, those things can help us make good decisions because these are the things we value at our institution. And then last but not least, character. We love if people have developed leadership skills, or we love people who are open to others, maybe others that are different than them, who are curious enough to learn about others, to get along well with others. Again, we're trying to build a community of scholars. So I know that all of these things sound really subjective, but we're looking for evidence of this in the admission process, in everything you send to us in an admission file. So having said all that, I understand the need to talk numbers. Grades typically are in the high A's, or the A's and high B's, typically for the applicant pool with rigorous curricular choices. And you see the profile of testing, given the world we're in right now in the pandemic, our faculty voted last spring to become test optional for the fall of 21. So any seniors in the audience who might be applying for admission, we are test optional for SAT or ACT. You'll be able to decide whether or not you want to send scores to us or not. And that's test optional for everything. It's test optional for admission. It's test optional for all special programs, test optional for financial aid, test optional for scholarship consideration. So we really want to put the ball in your court to decide whether or not you want to submit. You see the profile here. If you have taken a test and you think it lends evidence to your academic prowess, then we would certainly consider them. And you will find that on the common application or the coalition application, you'll be given a choice to answer whether or not you want to send test scores. And by the way, we have also added the idea that if you elected not to send test scores, but in the meantime, before an admission decision is released, you are able to sit for a test and the scores are competitive to the point that you would like to send them, we are going to allow people to change their mind up until 2 weeks before we release the decisions. That will give us enough time to review extra credentials that you might send to us. So we are test optional. The faculty will be considering whether or not we will be test optional beyond fall of 21. But for any seniors right now planning to apply, you can decide whether or not you want to send test scores. But I want to point out that the things on the left-hand side of the screen are equally as important to us in trying to figure out who might be great students to offer admission to Case Western Reserve. And this ties to those bullet points I've just talked about in the screen prior to what you're looking at now. So I also want to make a point that deciding that you want to apply opens up a whole new set of questions that you're going to have to answer. And one of them is, which decision plan might you use? So along the left-hand column here, you can see all of the decision plans that you could choose applying as an undergraduate at Case Western Reserve. So you'll see that anything called early decision, ED1 or ED2, those are your binding programs where if you apply basically with ED1 or ED2, you are saying, I've done my college search. I pick you number one. Now, if you pick me, I'm going to withdraw all my other applications and come. So if you got to that point in your college search where you know this is my first choice, ED1 can work for you. A majority of the students who apply to Case Western Reserve, though, are applying through the non-binding programs. That would be early action, the PreProfessional Scholars program, which I'll talk about in a second, regular decision, and then we do on occasion have people that want to take a gap semester or a semester off. And so we would entertain a spring admission application if you chose to go in that direction. But you see the timetables listed up here, and this is a screenshot of what you can find on our website. So you don't have to memorize all this, but you'll work with your college counselors to figure out which program plan might work best for you. So I want to point out the PreProfessional Scholars program. It is a conditional admit program to our medical school and our dental school. So we have the opportunity to choose a small number of incoming first-year students who know 4 years later, if they do the pre-professional curriculum, and if they have a minimum GPA, that they will have a spot in our medical school or our dental school. It has a different timetable because the med school and the dental school admission committees are involved in the process. So just for numbers' sake, let me throw this out there. This past year, we had roughly 2,500 applicants for the Pre-Professional Scholars Program. We have room for 60 finalists that will be invited to interview with the med school and our undergrad admission committees. And then we have 20 slots. So it's a competitive percentage challenge when you start talking about trying to predict admission to that program. And what happens is, since we have so many great applicants, students who aren't offered a finalist position or one of the slots in the program, their application is then read and notified through the regular decision timetable. So our goal is to enroll anybody who thinks is admissible and anybody who thinks we might be a great place. Realize that there's only 20 spots for that Pre-Professional Scholars Program in medicine with roughly 2,500 applicants. And these are strong applicants. I do sit on the interview committee and I've had a chance to read many of the files. So we would love people to enroll and realize that we graduate over 100 students every year who are going on to medical school. Only 20 of them could be Pre-Professional Scholars Program. So it's a great program if you know you want med or dent. But we want to make sure people realize that that is no bearing on whether or not in the future you're going to medical school or dental school. So it's a wonderful program if you know that's your path. And we love having it. But that's the story with the Pre-Professional Scholars Program. I also want to make a point about cost. One of the biggest issues with many of our families is being worried about affording to enroll. And tuition, room, and board and fees at Case Western Reserve is in the upper 60s. And it's a private school, so there's no differentiation between in-state and out-of-state. So as an Ohio resident, it would be the same cost as it would be for residents all over the world. But we, though, are one of those schools in the country that will guarantee to meet the difference between our cost and what your family can pay. And the way we figure out what families' resources can bear would be using two forms. For all students, whether they're international or domestic, we ask for the CSS profile form. And then for students with domestic students with U.S. citizenship status, we also ask for the FAFSA form. Those forms gives us some idea of your family's financial situation. Our cost minus what those forms say equals your demonstrated need. Most schools in the country are going to be able to come up with some aid to make it possible that you attend, but most schools cannot guarantee to meet the exact difference between the cost and what family resources can bear. But we will guarantee to meet 100% of that demonstrated need. The second piece is we also know who we compete against academically for your interest on the college side. And these are some of the best schools in the country. And so we are one of those schools that will offer some merit scholarship money to try and help us recruit and enroll some really highly qualified students. So without any separate applications, everybody who applies for admission is going to be considered for our pool of scholarship funding that ranged last year between $10,000 per year up to $30,000 per year, renewable through the undergraduate years if you stay in good academic standing. So about a third of our offers of admission go out the door with an offer of merit scholarship that is regardless of your family's financial situation. So it's only a third, it's not everybody, but based on everything you sent to us in the application for admission and the ratings that we do behind the scenes, about a third of our offers will go out with that scholarship money. I also want to mention that some of our departments have their own endowed or competitive scholarships that might involve a separate application, or for the music scholarships, they need to see an audition video for consideration. So I would encourage you, if you're going to look further at us, look at that scholarship tab on our website to see if there are individual departmental scholarships that have not, you could apply for in addition to that general pool of scholarship funds that you'd be considered for by applying for admission. So bottom line is, we think we can make it possible financially that people can afford, even though we know we are a high cost institution. And that high cost and the kind of resource that we have allow us to be as good as we can be. But we're known for our students. You're not known for your buildings necessarily. You can have all the buildings you want, but you're known for the students you're able to attract and what they do. So we're in the business of trying to make it possible that you can afford to attend a place like Case Western Reserve. So that is a quick overview of the process that we have to offer at Case Western Reserve. So I want to take this moment here to see if that has brought up any questions or anything that I didn't cover well enough, or with the possibility that maybe I nailed it and covered every question you might conceivably have. So my colleague has joined me here on camera, and so JP, are there any questions out there that came up during the course of the presentation? You're muted.
Knew I was going to do that. Hello, everyone. So Tom, thanks for sharing everything. I think you did a great job personally. I might also be a little bit biased, but there is also some questions out here that able to answer and send off a response, but I thought might be helpful for everyone. A good first question is, I think the first part of the answer is, well, not right now, but one of our viewers asked, when's a good time to visit colleges? What advice do you have on, perhaps if you're not a senior but if you're a sophomore or even a freshman starting to think about it, what's your kind of timeline at looking at schools?
So I think so let's all admit that this is a different time and you really can't get on many of the college campuses. But technology has allowed us to put together some pretty spiffy virtual tours. So you can get a sense for campuses. And I've looked at many of them, and I have kids in college, so I've been a parent in this process. So, if you're in this session, it's time, start looking. And I think the stress will rise as you get close to application time, because truly there are about 3,000 schools in the country. And my guess is you're probably getting email from most of them, right? Look at your inbox, it's probably filled. If you took a PSAT test, or if you ever filled out a form for one of these programs, many colleges can have your name. So one of the things you're going to need to do is try to figure out how you differentiate the schools. Is it by size? Is it by location? By program? Is it by the colors? I mean, you will ultimately decide what's going to be important to you. And one of the beautiful things about the higher ed landscape in this country is that you have so many choices. Okay, so I think the earlier start, the less pressure there is. And it's appropriate to say, if anybody asks, hey, I'm just looking, what do you have? So spend some time doing that, because I think as you start to go through your high school career, you start to figure out where your aptitudes lie and start to think about next steps. The clarity will come with time as you go through a process. But if you were trying to do this at the last minute to try and narrow choices, then I worry that you haven't done a good process. So now realize a lot of this is pretty rudimentary material, and you haven't really talked to students and you haven't talked to faculty members on an evening like tonight. As you get closer and closer to making choices, you're going to be done with the admission office. You're going to be talking to the department chair of BME or whatever you're looking for, right? So long story short, if you're in high school in a college prep environment, if nothing else, you should be thinking about the classes you're taking, because if you don't take a rigorous path in areas where you have some aptitude, it might be challenging 3 years later, 2 years later to even be in the admit pool in many places. How's that for an answer?
That's a great answer. Thanks, Tom. Another great question here is, how would you describe students that attend Case Western? How would you describe the student body?
All right, so I'm gonna start to answer this, and I'm gonna give you a few seconds to answer it as well. JP, by the way, is on our admission staff, but also a graduate of Case Western Reserve. So my first thought is very academically inclined, so brilliant people. And the students I know best, by the way, are the tour guides. And they're hired to be the most outgoing, gregarious people you meet. So I have all these, I know all these students who academically, I know they're so strong, but it's a really friendly, collaborative campus. And again, my sample size might be the tour guide, so it might be a skewed sample. But another thing I'm really intrigued by is the number of double majors in areas that don't seem to connect. I am shocked at how many engineers are musicians as well. And I'm shocked at how many people have hobbies and they're so into their hobbies that they're experts on their hobbies beyond what they're studying in the classroom. So it's a very eclectic mix of a lot of quantitative thinkers who have maybe a performance side or an intellectually curious side that might be different than what their major is. So I think that's one of the things I found really fascinating about the place. JP, what do you think?
Yeah, Tom, I absolutely agree. I always describe our students first and foremost as passionate. They're always really passionate about something, whether it's their major, whether it's their research or their extracurricular opportunity that they're in. And Tom, I think you're really right. I always like describing it as our students have lots of different things that they're interested in, but it's very deep interests in very different things rather than kind of that surface level kind of liberal arts approach where you've got, I like a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So it's kind of these really deep interests in things that might not really be, that at first glance might not seem connected, but then you talk to them and they can explain why that thing is really awesome. And both of those things are really cool. So like I have a friend, Mark, he was a physics and philosophy double major while on campus. And I still don't quite understand that as a combination, but you hear him talk about it. And for him, it was all about understanding the world's greatest mysteries, one on the physical side and one on the the mental side. So that was the way he approached it. And he anytime he brought it up, it was kind of mind-boggling, but he really loved it. So whatever those different interests you have, as Tom said, physics and philosophy, or engineering and music is a really common one on campus. Whatever you're really passionate about, you're going to find other students who are just as passionate about that thing as you are.
So, JP, there's a number of process questions here that I want to touch on. I can
Awesome.
Touch on them real quickly. When we talk, somebody asked about merit scholarships and if there's an advantage if they're early action. At Case Western Reserve, there is no advantage to any of the program plans for merit consideration. And by the way, even if you're an ED candidate, if your ratings are such that you would be in merit range, you will be offered a merit scholarship. So it's oblivious to which program plan you use. So we offered in early action, we offer scholarship in regular action and all points in between. And then another question was about SAT subject tests. So our requirement before going test optional had been that we wanted either an SAT or an ACT, and we were a super scoring school. We do not and have not required SAT subject tests. But I will tell you that for our whole history, we have been test optional for subject tests. If you've taken a subject test for other schools that you might be applying to, and you scored in the high percentile ranges, you have the opportunity on the application to say that, or to self-report those scores for consideration if you so chose. So we have never required subject tests, but if you took a subject test and scored in high percentiles, you could certainly add that to the credentials that you want to provide to us in the admission process. And let's see.
So Tom, there's a question about an honors program.
So Case Western Reserve does not have an honors program per se. And I'm not sure I can tell you historically why we do not, other than our guesses, our faculty might say, well, everything is the honors program. And, they might, I've not heard them say that, but they might say that. So yeah, we do not have a separate honors program. We have some very competitive programs, but we do not have structurally an honors program.
Tom, can you talk a little bit about safety on campus?
Sure. Always a big issue, and frankly, safety should be an issue for you on any campus that you go to. But if you looked at our campus, we are right smack dab in the middle of the city of Cleveland with no gates up around the campus, and even a lot of the cultural institutions interspersed throughout the campus. So safety is always a concern, and we try and, frankly, one of the biggest concerns is making sure students are being security conscious. So we are one of those campuses would have the blue lights and all the call centers, and the area and University Circle are really patrolled by at least 3 different police forces. Our own campus safety force, we have the University Circle and then Cleveland proper. You know, you have to, in the residence halls, you have card access. So, I think you're going to see a high security presence. But having said that, we're in the city and people need to be security conscious. So every school is required to have their security report public, and you can find it on our website. So with any reported incidents, that would all be public. So it's a concern, but we are the neighborhood in University Circle is quite a famous neighborhood, not just for Case Western Reserve, but all the cultural institutions and all the medical institutions. So it's a destination for a lot of people. So it's a high visibility area. So, but be safe on every college campus. Anything to add, JP?
No, not much. I would just say I've, having been a student on campus, I was always very thankful that I never felt unsafe on campus. It's always, don't have both headphones in when you're walking at night, but whether it's calling it what we call safe ride or a walking buddy, and being able to move around freely and thoughtfully is really important. And so they do a lot to make sure we stay safe on campus for sure. Tom, I kind of we can probably squeeze in 2 more quick questions here.
Okay.
Noah asked, and if you don't mind, I think I can handle this one. Having been being an alum, feeling students have a healthy balance of engaging in things beyond academics. I do think they have a healthy balance. It's possible that it is unhealthy, and if it is unhealthy, it's because we do too many things beyond academics instead of buckling down and focusing. Our students are very involved on campus. As we were talking about, everyone has those different passions that they're following, and often those things are also outside their academic realms, and so they're very involved outside of campus. I know we kind of, being a top research institution, we can sometimes get thought of as a, just a study all the time place, but it's a work hard, play hard type of place. Students are super involved on campus, and there's a good balance between your in-class work and your social life and your out-of-class activities that you're involved in, whatever they might be. And then, Tom, there's a question specifically about the PreProfessional Scholars Program and what we might be looking for from those applicants.
So my experience with PreProfessional Scholars is that most everybody in that applicant pool is a strong student. So having real strong academic performance, all the academic or the right classes, the science prowess, the math prowess, that not necessarily differentiated. The biggest issue is whether or not you have developed the maturity, the empathy to deliver patient care, and very importantly, how do you know you want to be a doctor at your age to have picked a career? And that tends to be the differentiator. And if you fill out the common application or the coalition application, you'll find that if you check the box for PPSP, there are 2 supplemental essays. And one of them asks, how do you know you want to be a doctor or a dentist? And the other one is, tell us something about yourself we don't already know. And those are important essays because have you shadowed? How do you know you want to be a doctor? Do you know what it is to deliver patient care? And have you developed that kind of empathy and worldliness to be able to do that? Because that's different than being a researcher who might be in the lab versus somebody who's delivering the actual patient care to the person who might be going through health struggles. And so those tend to be the things that are very important here. The last thing is the med school loves people who are engaged in their community, involved in activities, have some way to relieve stress. They love people who develop leadership capabilities. So all those things, those extracurriculars and the kind of engagement that you have become, in my mind, the differentiators. And then ultimately the interview is very important to engage others, to connect with others. Those tend to be the differentiators.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tom. And
So I think we're near end of time here. So I hope we were able to answer the lion's share of the questions you might have. And we invite you to come look at Case Western Reserve virtually with all the different links that we have on our website. And then we look forward to the time when we can host you on campus in wonderful University Circle. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom and JP, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. When you close this window, you will find a link to a quick 4-question survey. We would really appreciate your feedback. Also, this was just one of many sessions being hosted, so be sure to sign up for additional sessions at oacac.org. Also, in about a week, you'll be able to find this session's recording as well as other session recordings at the same website, oacac.org. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, JP.